Have you ever watched a woman walk into a room and felt every head turn, even though she wasn't wearing the most makeup, the flashiest outfit, or the perfect face by anyone's standard? Maybe you've asked yourself, what does she have that I don't? And maybe the answer you've been given your whole life is the wrong one. Because it's not about being the youngest woman in the room. It's not about designer clothes, or a certain dress size, or features that match whatever beauty standard is trending this year. That's not an accident, and it's not luck. It's a way of thinking, a set of habits she's built, refined, and repeated until they became who she is, until they stopped being something she does and became something she simply is. Here's what nobody tells you. Beauty that lasts, the kind that people remember years later, the kind that doesn't fade with a bad night's sleep or a birthday. That beauty is built, not born. It's constructed one decision at a time, in the small, unglamorous moments nobody's watching. Today I'm walking you through 10 of those habits, the quiet, powerful patterns that separate a gorgeous woman from an ordinary one. I'm going to go deep on each one, give you the psychology behind why it works, and give you real, practical ways to start building it into your own life starting today. Stick around until the end, because habit number 10 is the one almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most important one on this entire list. Let's get into it. Habit 1, she treats her body like home, not a project. Let's start with the foundation, because everything else on this list is built on top of it. Gorgeous women don't wake up hating what they see in the mirror and spend the day trying to fix themselves. They don't treat their reflection as a problem to be solved. They treat their bodies as home, a place to live, not a project to renovate. Think about the difference in energy between those two mindsets. A woman who sees her body as a problem walks through the day slightly at war with herself. Every mirror is a moment of judgment. Every photo is a source of anxiety. That tension doesn't stay hidden. It leaks into her posture, her voice, the way she holds a room. People pick up on it, even if they can't name what they're sensing. Now picture the opposite. A woman who has made peace with her body moves through the world without that quiet, constant argument running in the background. She has more bandwidth for everything else, for conversation, for creativity, for connection, because she isn't spending it defending herself against her own reflection. This doesn't mean she doesn't take care of herself. In fact, women who've made peace with their bodies often take better care of them because the motivation shifts. She's not eating well to punish herself into a smaller size. She's not exercising because she hates what she sees. She's doing these things because she respects the body that carries her through her life. That respect changes the tone of everything. Her skin looks calmer, her eyes look brighter, because stress hormones aren't constantly working against her. There's something else worth mentioning here. Comparison. The fastest way to destroy this kind of peace is to measure yourself against filtered images and curated angles designed to look effortless. Gorgeous women learn, often the hard way, to mute or unfollow accounts that leave them feeling smaller instead of inspired. That single boundary, curating what you consume, does more for how you see yourself than almost any skincare routine ever could. How to build this starting today. First, change the language you use with yourself. Instead of, I need to fix this, try, how do I want to feel today? That reframe moves you from correction to care. Second, start each morning by naming one thing your body allowed you to do yesterday, walked you to work, let you laugh until you cried, carried you through a hard day. This sounds small, but gratitude toward your body retrains the way your brain relates to it. Third, do an audit of who you follow online. If an account consistently makes you feel worse about yourself, mute it. Replace it with something that makes you feel expansive instead of small. This one habit, practiced consistently, changes the entire foundation everything else on this list is built on. Habit 2. She guards her peace like it's sacred drama. Gossip, chaos, urgency that isn't really urgent. Gorgeous women simply don't feed it. And this isn't because they're fragile or above it all. It's because they understand something most people don't. Peace is a form of power. Here's why this matters so much. Stress does something visible to a person. It shows up in tension around the eyes, in a jaw that's always slightly clenched, in a voice that's pitched a little too high, a little too fast. You can often tell when someone is carrying constant low-grade stress just by watching them for 30 seconds. And on the flip side, you can tell when someone has genuine calm because it reads as effortless, even luxurious. A woman who protects her peace has usually learned this through experience, often the hard way, after being pulled into other people's chaos one too many times and realizing how much of her own life it cost her. So she starts drawing lines. She stops answering every message the second it arrives. She stops absorbing every crisis a friend or coworker brings to her as though it's her own emergency. She learns the difference between being supportive and being a dumping ground. This kind of boundary setting can feel uncomfortable at first, especially for women who were raised to believe that being agreeable and endlessly available is the same thing as being kind. But there's a difference between kindness and self-abandonment. A gorgeous woman has usually learned that difference. There's a psychological concept worth mentioning here: emotional contagion, the idea that moods spread between people almost like a virus, often without either person realizing it's happening. If you spend your day steeped in other people's anxiety, outrage, and urgency, you absorb it, whether you intend to or not. Protecting your peace is really protecting your nervous system, and your nervous system state shows up on your face. How to build this starting today. Before reacting to anything upsetting, a text, a comment, a piece of news, pause for 10 full seconds. Ask yourself, will this matter in a year, a month, even a week? More often than not, the answer is no, and that pause alone diffuses most manufactured urgency. Second, identify one relationship in your life that consistently leaves you drained rather than lifted, and start creating small amounts of distance from it, not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. Third, build in small pockets of quiet during your day where you're not consuming anything. No phone, no music, no conversation. Even 5 minutes of silence resets your nervous system in a way that's visible by the end of the day. Habit 3. She has a signature, not a trend. Trendy is forgettable. By definition, a trend is something everyone is wearing this month and no one remembers next year. Gorgeous women have something that's theirs, a color they always wear well, a way they wear their hair, a scent that people associate with them, a way of putting pieces together that no algorithm handed them. This isn't about spending money, and it's not about having an enormous wardrobe. Some of the most memorable, magnetic women wear a fairly small, consistent rotation of things because they have done the work of figuring out exactly what suits them, and they stopped chasing every new trend the moment it appeared. There's a psychological reason this works so well. Consistency builds recognition, and recognition builds memorability. If every time you see someone, they look completely different, different silhouette, different colors, different vibe entirely, there's nothing for your brain to latch onto. But if a woman has a signature, your brain starts to associate that signature with her specifically. A particular red lipstick, a particular way she always wears her hair back, a perfume that lingers in a room after she's left it. These become anchors of identity. There's also a deeper layer here about self-knowledge. Building a signature style requires you to actually know yourself, your coloring, your proportions, your personality, of what makes you feel powerful versus what makes you feel like you're wearing a costume. That process of self-discovery is, in itself, an attractive quality, because it radiates as authenticity rather than imitation. How to build this starting today? Pick one signature element this month. It could be a lip color, a fragrance, a particular silhouette, a piece of jewelry you always wear. Wear it consistently enough that people start to associate it with you specifically. Second, before buying anything new, ask yourself, does this look like me, or does this look like everyone on my feed right now? If it's the second one, consider skipping it. Third, take note of the version of yourself that gets the most compliments, not the most likes online, but the version that makes real people in your real life say, "You look amazing today." Study what you were wearing, how you did your hair, your energy that day. That's often a clue to your actual signature. Habit 4. She listens like it's a skill, not a weight. Most people listen just long enough to plan their next sentence. You can usually feel it in a conversation. The person nodding along but clearly already composing their reply, waiting for their turn to talk about themselves. Gorgeous women listen differently. They listen to actually understand, not to respond. Their eyes stay present instead of drifting to their phone or scanning the room. Their questions are specific rather than generic. Not "how was your day?" but How did that conversation with your sister actually go? People leave interactions with them feeling truly seen, and that feeling is rare enough that it becomes unforgettable. Why does this matter so much for attraction and magnetism? Because being deeply listened to is one of the most undersupplied experiences in modern life. Everyone is distracted, everyone is half present, split between 6 tabs of their own attention. A person who gives full, undivided presence stands out instantly, almost jarringly, because it's so uncommon. There's also something deeper happening here. Real listening requires setting your own ego aside for a moment, resisting the urge to relate every story back to your own experience, resisting the urge to offer unsolicited advice, resisting the urge to fix instead of simply witness. That kind of restraint is itself a form of quiet confidence, because it doesn't come from a place of needing to prove anything. How to build this starting today. In your next conversation, resist the urge to relate everything back to yourself. If a friend tells you about a hard day, practice staying with their story instead of immediately jumping to, "That reminds me of when I." Second, ask one more follow-up question than feels natural. If someone mentions something briefly, circle back to it. "Wait, you mentioned that earlier. Tell me more about that." Third, put your phone away entirely during conversations that matter, not face down on the table, away, out of sight. The difference in presence is immediately noticeable, both to you and to the person across from you. Habit 5, she moves with intention, not urgency. Rushing reads as anxious. It doesn't matter how put together someone looks. If they're moving through the world like they're perpetually late and slightly panicked, that energy overrides everything else about their appearance. Gorgeous women walk like they know where they're going, even when they don't. They speak like their words matter, which means they don't rush to fill every silence. They sit like the room belongs to them just as much as anyone else in it. None of this comes from arrogance. It comes from the simple absence of apology for taking up space. This is worth sitting with for a moment, because so many women are trained from a young age to make themselves smaller, to speak more quietly, to take up less physical space, to soften every opinion into a question, to apologize reflexively for things that need no apology. Unlearning that training is itself an act of quiet rebellion, and it shows up physically in a way people notice immediately, even if they can't articulate why. Slowing down also does something practical. It makes people pay closer attention to you. Fast speech, fast movement, fast reactions all tend to blur together and get forgotten. Slower, more deliberate movement draws the eye and holds it, the same way a slow zoom in a film carries more weight than a quick cut. How to build this starting today. Practice walking about 10% slower than feels natural for 1 full week. Notice how differently people respond to your presence when you're not rushing through a room. Second, when you're about to apologize for something that doesn't warrant it. Taking up space in a conversation, asking a question, needing a moment to think. Pause and ask whether the apology is actually necessary or just a reflex. Third, in conversation, allow a beat of silence before responding instead of jumping in immediately. That small pause signals that your words are considered, not reactive. Habit 6. She knows the difference between alone and lonely. She's comfortable eating at a restaurant by herself. She can travel solo. She can spend a Friday night with absolutely no plans and feel completely fine about it. That comfort with her own company is one of the most attractive qualities a person can possess, because it signals something important. She isn't looking for someone to complete her. She's looking for someone to join an already full, already good life. There's a real difference between being alone and being lonely, and most people conflate the two. Loneliness is the ache of wanting connection you don't have. Solitude, done well, is something closer to restoration. Time spent recharging, thinking, creating, simply existing without performing for anyone. Women who have cultivated real comfort with solitude tend to bring a settled, unhurried energy into their relationships, because they're not entering them from a place of desperation. This also changes the entire dynamic of how someone shows up in a relationship. A woman who needs constant company to feel okay will often make choices out of fear, staying too long in situations that don't serve her, tolerating things she shouldn't, because the alternative, being alone with herself, feels unbearable. A woman who's built genuine comfort in her own company has no such fear driving her decisions, and that freedom from fear reads as strength. How to build this starting today. Schedule one solo activity this week that you'd normally only do with company: a coffee alone, a solo movie, a walk with no destination and no phone. Second, notice the discomfort if it arises. And instead of immediately reaching for your phone to fill the silence, sit with it for just a few extra minutes. That discomfort tends to fade faster than expected. Third, start building a genuine relationship with your own interests. A hobby, a book, a project, something that's entirely yours and doesn't depend on anyone else's participation or approval. Habit 7. She says no without over-explaining. Gorgeous women understand something that takes most people years to learn. No is a complete sentence. They don't drown their boundaries in 3 paragraphs of justification and guilt. This isn't coldness, it's self-respect. And self-respect is one of the most attractive qualities a person can carry, because it shows everyone around her exactly how she expects to be treated. Over-explaining a no often comes from a fear that the other person won't accept a boundary unless it's thoroughly justified. But here's the thing: the more you explain, the more room you leave for someone to argue with your reasoning instead of your decision. A short, kind, unapologetic no leaves very little room for negotiation, because there's nothing to negotiate with. This habit also protects energy in a very practical way. Every over-explained no costs emotional labor. The anxious rehearsing beforehand, the guilt afterward, the mental replaying of whether you said it the right way. A woman who'd practiced saying no cleanly saves that energy for things that actually deserve it. How to build this, starting today. The next time you need to decline something, practice stopping after one sentence. I can't make it, but thank you for thinking of me. Resist the urge to add 3 more sentences explaining exactly why. Second, remind yourself that a reasonable person doesn't need a full justification to accept a boundary. And if someone does push back hard against a simple, polite no, that itself is useful information about the relationship. Third, practice this in low-stakes situations first, declining a small favor, an extra task at work, before applying it to bigger, more emotionally loaded situations. Habit 8. She invests in her mind as much as her appearance books. New skills, hard conversations, genuine curiosity about how the world works. This is where real depth comes from, and depth is what makes someone unforgettable long after the initial spark of physical attraction fades. Most social interactions stay remarkably shallow, surface-level small talk, weather, work complaints, recycled opinions absorbed from whatever's trending that week. A woman who can go somewhere else in conversation, who's genuinely curious about history or psychology or a completely unrelated field she picked up as a hobby, becomes memorable, precisely because most conversations don't go there. This isn't about being the smartest person in the room or performing intelligence to impress anyone. It's about genuine curiosity, which reads completely differently than performance. Someone who's actually curious asks real questions, admits what they don't know, and gets visibly excited talking about something they've been learning. That excitement is contagious in a way that trying to sound impressive never is. There's also a compounding effect here. The more you learn, the more connections your brain can draw between seemingly unrelated things, which makes conversation with you richer over time, not because you're reciting facts, but because your thinking has more texture to it. How to build this, starting today. Pick one subject you currently know nothing about, something completely outside your usual interests, and spend 15 minutes a day learning about it for the next month. Second, in conversations, practice asking one question you genuinely don't know the answer to, rather than steering the conversation back to something familiar and safe. Third, keep a running list of ideas, quotes, or facts that genuinely fascinate you as you come across them. Revisiting that list keeps your curiosity active instead of letting it go dormant. Habit 9. She celebrates other women instead of competing with them. Insecurity competes. Confidence collaborates. Gorgeous women compliment other women freely, build each other up in rooms where it would be easy to stay quiet, and don't experience another woman's success or beauty as a threat to their own. This generosity of spirit is visible from across a room almost immediately. People can sense, often within minutes, whether someone is scanning a room to compare and compete, or genuinely enjoying the people around her. The first energy is exhausting to be near. The second is magnetic. There's a deeper psychological piece here too. Scarcity mindset, the belief that there's only so much attention, beauty, or success to go around, and someone else having it means less for you, is corrosive. And it shows on a person's face and in their body language over time, whether they intend it to or not. Abundance mindset, the genuine belief that someone else's shine doesn't dim yours, is liberating, and liberation is attractive. Women who practice this habit consistently also tend to build stronger networks of real friendships, because people can feel when someone is a safe, generous presence rather than a quiet competitor. That safety draws people in and keeps them close. How to build this starting today? Give one genuine, specific compliment to another woman today, not about her looks, but about something she did, said, or created. Specificity makes it land differently than a generic, "you look nice." Second, the next time you catch yourself comparing yourself to another woman, consciously redirect the thought toward genuine appreciation instead. "She handled that so well," instead of, "Why can't I be more like that?" Third, actively look for opportunities to publicly credit or celebrate another woman's win, rather than staying quiet out of quiet competitiveness. Habit 10, she lets herself be ordinary, sometimes. Here's the one most people miss entirely. Gorgeous women don't perform confidence every single moment of every single day. They let themselves have off days, bad hair, an unfiltered, slightly too loud laugh, a moment of genuinely not knowing the answer to something and saying so out loud instead of covering it up. That permission to be human, instead of chasing an impossible, permanently polished ideal, is what actually makes someone feel real, approachable, and deeply attractive over the long term. Perfection is impressive for about 5 minutes. It's admirable from a distance, almost intimidating. But it doesn't invite closeness, because there's nowhere for another person to meet you if you never show any texture, any rough edges, any humanity. Authenticity is what people actually fall for and stay for. Think about the people you feel most drawn to in your own life. Chances are, it's not the person who seems flawless and untouchable. It's the person who laughs at their own mistakes, who admits when they're having a hard week, who lets you see them without the performance. That visibility creates trust, and trust is the foundation everything else on this list is actually resting on. This habit is also, in some ways, the hardest one to practice, because it requires letting go of control, the control of always looking a certain way, always seeming a certain way, always having it together. But letting go of that control is exactly what makes a woman feel accessible instead of like an unreachable ideal. And accessible, warm, real presence is what people actually remember and come back to. How to build this starting today. Once this week, let someone see you without performing. No filtered version, no rehearsed answer, no carefully managed image. Just show up as you actually are that day. Second, when you make a mistake in front of others, resist the urge to over-apologize or spiral. A simple laugh and, "well, that happened," often does more for how people perceive you than pretending it didn't happen. Third, notice the moments you're tempted to hide the unpolished parts of yourself, and experiment with letting just one of them show. Notice how people respond, usually with more warmth, not less. So there you have it, 10 habits, and none of them require a certain age, a certain face, or a certain bank account. What they require is intention, choosing, day after day, in small unglamorous moments, to build the kind of inner life that eventually shows up on the outside. The most gorgeous women you've ever met probably weren't the most conventionally beautiful people in any room they walked into. They were the ones who felt like themselves, all the way through. Women who'd made peace with their bodies, guarded their peace, built a life full enough that they weren't waiting on anyone else to complete it, and who let themselves be human along the way. That's the real secret. Nobody wants to sell you, because it doesn't come in a bottle or a treatment plan. It comes from the inside, one habit at a time. Now I want to hear from you. Out of these 10 habits, which one do you already practice naturally, and which one are you going to start working on today? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one, and I love seeing which habits resonate most with you. If this video helped you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and I'll see you very soon.